Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Gonzo Ewok channel with me, Ewok, for this, a Kerbal short. So, we are at episode 5 of Geordie Space Program, and what I was initially doing when I came up with what I'm about to show you was messing around with the saved game. I had bragged that I was going to do a Mun flyby, and I originally came to Kerbal Space Program today to see if that was going to be feasible, and I got completely and utterly distracted and didn't even try and do that and did something else instead. I kind of got thinking about the tourist contracts that we recently did. We recently did a couple of contracts to take tourists to sub-orbital and back. I think that was in episode 3, and I thought, can I build a ship to do that with minimum effort? And so I've been playing around for a couple of hours and I've come up with something that I'm relatively pleased with. So my original idea was to try and come up with a single stage ship. So one stage that you just press the spacebar button and then it goes away and delivers the guys to suborbital and back. And that's it. No input from the human required. Now, I've sort of achieved that, sort of, not quite. It became apparent quite early on that obviously parachutes are a must, and you can't set the parachutes off in the first stage because then they'll just either explode or they'll completely kill your launch and stop you from being able to launch successfully. So I've had to do something with the parachutes. That said, the parachutes aren't going to be part of a stage. They are part of a stage, but I'm never going to activate that stage. But I do need to do some stuff with those parachutes while this ship is in flight. So it's not quite one stage. It's sort of a cheat one stage. So I'm going to put my two tourists into my touristy holder. What do we call it? Crew compartment. Put my two tourists in the crew compartment. You'll notice that I'm using the Stay Putnik probe core for this one, and I've got no batteries, so when it runs out of batteries it's done. I'm using solid fuel boosters. I'm launching at an angle because I want to go up at an angle, and like I say, I'm not going to control this in any way, shape or form. I'm just going to press the spacebar button and let it ride. I've got a Sepratron here, and that Sepratron activates in the first stage, so the rocket and the crew compartment aren't actually going to be attached to each other from the moment that I press the spacebar button. But here we go. I'll show the thing in action. Show that it does work. Or at least I hope it works. I tested it once. I've tested it several times and it didn't work. I tested it once and it did work, and then I came to record this video. It was actually so successful that after I launched, I went away and made myself a sandwich and came back just in time to see it land, which was great. So, first things first, launch it, and it just goes off on its own. Now, because it was tilted, it is going to tilt somewhat on its own before it straightens itself out, which is good because I don't want too steep an angle when I come to the re-entry phase. Otherwise, the whole thing might just burn up. Now, I've hit about 3,000 feet, so I'm going to do the second thing I need to do, which is activate the parachutes, and those parachutes are set to automatically deploy when they hit 0.75 minimum pressure, which is around about 3,000 meters, 3,000 meters, something like that. Now, I mentioned that the crew compartment isn't actually attached to the rocket. That's what these girders are for. These girders sort of hold it in place. In fact, you saw quite well there when it wobbled a bit when the fuel ran out. So those girders are kind of like keeping it attached to the rocket. I've got an apparatus of 104. So yeah, those girders keep it attached to the rocket because it tries to slide off, but those girders keep it attached. It also helps with the tilt because it naturally tilts downwards, so those girders kind of pull the rocket downwards a little bit, so it assists with the tilt as well as the initial angle of the launch. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to nip up to about 80,000 feet fast forward, so you don't have to watch the whole thing. And then when we hit about 80,000 feet, what I'll do is I'll go back to normal time, and what we should see, because this rocket is heavier than the crew compartment, it's being dragged down to Kerbin slightly quicker, there's slightly more force exerted from it, so you'll see the crew compartment now gradually, naturally separate from the rocket, so that when it returns back into Kerbin's influence and starts going through the atmosphere, it'll be on its own. It's nice the way that happens. It's very, very slow, but it is nice, and it's one of the parts of the design I'm pretty proud with. Now, obviously, I had to do that little tweak with the parachute. I mentioned that we're on Geordie Space Program episode 5 and that I'm using the saved game for this. That's relevant because it means I'm limited to the technology that we have at that point in the series, which is quite low. In theory, I think it might be possible to make a single stage rocket that doesn't use parachutes, perhaps with air brakes, but certainly the idea that I have in my head is the crew compartment, when it separates off, will form a kind of glider using some of the aerodynamics components that'll automatically kind of right itself, and doing that could reduce the speed substantially and mean that it comes in at more with forward momentum than downward momentum, and then maybe use some girders that can withstand quite a high level of impact to kind of take the brunt of the landing and mean that the crew compartment itself lands intact. I did try using girders to do a landing inspired by the probe core that landed in, I think it was episode 2 or episode 3, where it landed intact because it was surrounded by the girder. Nothing survived. With this level of technology, parachutes is the only way to go. We're actually coming down now. So you see we've separated quite nicely. So I'll speed back up until we get back into the atmosphere. So that would be my long-term plan if I had more time, and it would take a lot of time and better technology. But at the moment, it's that cheeky parachute trick. So I've moved the camera around, I've activated the parachutes, but since the moment we took off, you'll not have seen the pitch and yaw move at all, because I've had my hands only on camera controls, not on rocket controls. So this entire launch has been purely independent of anything that I could have done. You see the electric charge is now running out, so I have no control even if I wanted to. Not that I have had any so far. The beauty of this is that it's without batteries and solar panels and things like that. It's freed up some parts that I could use elsewhere. Again, because I'm using the GSP episode 5 save, we haven't upgraded the shipbuilder, the rocket building facilities, so there's a 30 part limit. I think the ship came in at like 22 parts or something like that, so it's quite limited. We're going to come in over land, which is nice. You see most of that surface speed is bled off. As long as we're below, say, 250 meters a second when those parachutes automatically deploy, we should be fine. And it looks like we are going to be fine. Piper doesn't look particularly happy about it. Oh, I heard the explosion. I should have been watching that. So that was the rocket body exploding. We're getting just below 2,000. Those parachutes will deploy. Spin it upside down at 750 meters. They'll fully deploy. There they go. I'll slow it right down. And then we can just gradually bring it back to Earth. So there you go. This is sort of one stage, sort of not one stage, but definitely minimal pilot input required suborbital tourist craft that can take 2 Kerbins up into orbit and back, up into suborbit and back again. And all you have to do is press the spacebar button, and then once you get above 3,000 meters, activate those parachutes. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly bring the vessel back in. We'll see the after action report. So as a result of that, that's 4,000, 8,000, it's another 24,000, so we're at 32,000 plus 25. So that nets 32,000, and all you have to do is press the space bar and activate the parachutes. That's something that hopefully we might see some use in the Geordie Space Program series. I'll keep the template saved. But it's a nice little experiment. Just goes to show that if you've got some time to kill and a copy of Kerbal Space Program, you can easily pass a couple of hours away trying to do something stupid. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed the ship design. Hope to see you next time for the next episode of Geordie Space Program episode 6. And I'll keep some of these Kerbal shorts coming as well. Cheers everybody and goodbye.